Go ahead.
All right. Well, we're going to continue now with the remainder of the chapter on the duality of life. And we left off on page 73 and starting on page 74 now of the missing link. Do not ponder on the subject of ego. If you do, your labor will be in vain. Focus on the missing link between our psychological nature and our spiritual nature. The truth you seek does not come from books or the spoken word, but from within the soul of humanity. Nothing on earth can be more paradoxical than truth, for truth represents both the form and the formless. Without one, the other is only half the puzzle. Without one, the other is of little value and is a cosmic lie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's where we've been in the mental health field, isn't it? We've been trying to look for the answers in the form.
Right.
And because we've ignored the formless, it's not working out real well. Right. In our country, Ofer, we had our suicide rate has gone up from 1996 to 2016, gone up nearly 30%. It's gone up 41% in the rural America, and I believe it's over 50% in adolescent girls. And it's a crisis. Worldwide, well, in the United States, someone commits suicide every 15 minutes, 38,000 last year. Worldwide, there was 800,000 suicides last year. The World Health Organization has declared it a world emergency. In the United States, we are still losing by suicide 20 veterans a day, almost one per hour. So it's time for a new paradigm. And it's got to include the formless. As hard as that is, Judy and I just realized we've got to do our best to try to present this to people, because everybody knows there's more than the form. It's just that we've been awkward about talking about it. That's my 2 cents. Does anybody else on these 2 pages want to say something?
I think it would be maybe beneficial for the viewers, for the listeners, if you can maybe elaborate, and it sounds weird, I know, but to elaborate your understanding of the formless.
I can do that, but I know that others can here too. Judy, David, do you want to say something about that, about the formless?
I know it's a tricky question.
Yes, okay.
To me, it's not tricky at all. To me, it's not tricky at all.
Exactly what we've been working on. Bill and I have been working together on a paper regarding the fact that this is the missing piece in our understanding of humanity. And it's in humanity's understanding of itself, that we are spiritual beings who are able to see and interact with form in this world, but the formless spiritual nature is who we are deep down, is who we really are, is the principles at work, is the energy of life flowing through us and giving us the ability to create and act out our life. And when we miss the fact that spiritual energy, that power, that formless spiritual truth that's behind all creation is at the heart of all of us. It's the same for all of us. We're all part of it. We get lost in our own personal thoughts and we take them seriously. So we pay attention to the form and we forget where it came from. It's like saying, and we lose our gratitude for the fact that we can change. We even lose our knowledge that we can change.
Can you think of a metaphor to maybe people understand that? For me, the understanding of the formless is something that it's intuitive. It's something that I can't put into words. And when I speak to people, I find I lack the ability unless, unless I speak to religious people and then I can use God.
Mm-hmm.
I lack the ability to, I don't even try to explain it to them. I just hope they will pick it up sometimes on their own. But I mean, you have had so much more experience of interacting and explaining it to people.
Yeah, I hardly ever get to talk to religious people. So, oh gosh, to me, it's like, if I remember this may seem like a ridiculous example, but it's kind of to the point. So my mother suffered from dementia before she died. And of course, because she really couldn't remember anything a minute at a time, my dad, one of the first things that happened is he took the car keys away. And the car is parked in the driveway outside of our house. And my mother would get in the car and she'd be holding onto the wheel and pressing on the accelerator and saying, "Why won't it go? Why won't it go? Why won't it go?" And it's because, of course, the engine wasn't started. And it's kind of like, that's like trying to solve the problem in our intellect without realizing that the engine of our life is the spiritual energy behind it all. And we don't go anywhere. We go over the same thoughts again and again. And we wonder, why can't we solve this problem? Why can't we see our way out of this? Why can't we find the answer? And it's because we're not allowing the engine, allowing for that, looking there. And that's, that may seem, it's a little off, but it's really what happens when we forget where the power came from.
David, did you want to say anything at this point?
I don't think so. Thank you for the offer.
Okay. Well, Ofer, let me give it a try, because on one hand, I totally understand what you're saying. On the other hand, because it's been where I was with this for a long, long time. And now it seems so obvious that, and it seems so really simple that it is. I mean, I think Judy's metaphor there is an excellent one, but as a physician, I've seen people die, and after they die, they still have all their organs, but there's something that isn't there anymore. And God knows, I know that you've seen people die in very difficult circumstances. But I've seen people die where they weren't externally injured. The breath of life was gone. And I was saying earlier, I think while we were waiting for you, that when in this article, we said, since the beginning of time, human beings have tried to understand where life comes from. And everybody knows not only when a human being or an animal is dead, but we know when a tree is dead. We know when a plant is dead. And I think for a long time, I just saw it kind of as the breath of life, but it's an intelligent breath of life. I was talking to somebody at our conference, our Three Principles conference in Manhattan Beach, and he was a friend of Roger Mills's many years ago, 35 years ago. But they're growing without pesticides and stuff, and he really understands plants. And he talks how the plants send out, I don't know what it is, but they send out things that, I don't know whether it's little secretions or what. And I forget how many yards away, but it can reach, if there's rocks near the plants that have trace elements that the plants need. It sends out these signals, and they get the trace elements from the rocks, and they're brought back to the plants. Now, the reason I say all this, or we all know, you know, there's one of our three principals who was a tree surgeon for years, and he knows about trees, about how the trees communicate with each other in the forest. And if a fungus or an infection comes to one side of the forest, the word gets through the entire forest to build up your antibodies or your defenses against this disease that's trying to invade the forest. And the idea that there's an intelligence, it's not just a breath of life, it's an intelligent, formless energy. It's what allows, even at 77.5, if I break my fibula today or my tibula in my lower leg, the doctors will not cure it, but they will immobilize it and tell me not to put weight on it. And in 6 weeks, something has healed my broken bone to where it's okay again. Now, metaphorically, I think what we've done with mental health problems, people that have experienced traumatic events or adverse events or whatever names we want to give on it, we have, like the broken leg, every 3 days we've went and seen if it was healed yet. And we've been messing with it instead of allowing the natural intelligent energy of life, whether you want to call it God or you want to call it Dave or Curly or Mo or Larry. It doesn't matter to me. To me, it doesn't. A religious person, it would probably, what name. But it's there. There's something before form. From even the famous quantum physicist David Bohm said, before matter, there has to be consciousness. Last time you'd have trouble weighing consciousness or measuring its height and its weight and its breadth. David Bohm was saying there has to be formless. There has to be a formless, intelligent, conscious energy for there to be matter. Wow. So I think we sometimes, in our own insecurity, we think like we're talking airy-fairy when we're not. We're talking physics. That's why Sid could teach physicists from MIT at British Aerospace Electronics for 3 days and be asked. They asked him to hire Sid Bant for another 3 days. I think it was a third time also. Because he could talk to them about the universal principles that are not just behind optics and behind motion and behind heat and behind circulation and behind relativity, but behind everything. So I don't know. I hear you, and I think the more that we admit when it's difficult and just speak from what we do see and not have to see what anybody else sees. But there are examples all around us that there's a formless energy, and it's intelligent, and it's everywhere. And it's always trying to keep things alive. It's always trying to keep the plant alive. It's always trying to keep the tree alive. It's always trying to keep the dog alive. It's always trying to keep us alive. Now, since we're in form, we're not going to live to infinity. But it doesn't mean that there isn't an intelligent energy that's doing its best to help us survive as healthily and as best as we can until we no longer in this form. I don't know. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Does anybody want to say anything about what I said? Because maybe it sounded like gobbledygook.
No, it sounded right to me, but I also think that's it's easier sometimes to see it in life and to see it in nature, to see it in our animals, to see it, than it is to see it in ourselves or to see it in other people, because we think too much about what we're thinking. But I've noticed it, and I've had pets my whole life, and I've noticed it with every pet I've ever had. if I'm not well, or when Sarah was growing up, if she wasn't well, the pets would respect that. They would try to comfort her. Now, she didn't call the pet and say, I don't feel good, give me an aspirin. Pets would know. They just have this connection that they can tell if something is needed. And that's that same thing. It's that connection. You're talking about the formless energy behind all form, but that's what connects us. That's the connective tissue of all of life. It's not tissue because it's not a form, but it's that connection of the intelligence of just knowing. It's like people who say, make a phone call to a friend and find out that the friend was, struggling with something, and say, thank you so much for calling. I really was thinking about you. I really wanted to talk to you. Well, there's some knowing that we have when we're quiet enough that we feel that connection and we respond to it. And that's that formless, to me, that's part of the formless energy of all things as well.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm sorry, Judy, go ahead.
done. I'm
okay.
done. Mm-hmm.
I think I shared this with Judy, and I may not have, but Linda and I had a strange experience, Ofer and David, recently. We had a bird. We were actually sitting in our little pool, floating around, talking to each other in the 104-degree heat. But we were in the shade. We were very comfortable. We kid about, oh boy, so this is suffering in the Arizona heat, huh? And we were having a delightful time. And suddenly this bird crash landed in our pool. And it was struggling. It looked like it was struggling not to drown. And I could tell, that doesn't happen. Birds don't do that, And I was looking for somewhere to find a tray or something to put under it. And my wife, Linda, was just a little more present, maybe a lot more present than I. And she was guided to bring her thing that she was floating on over to the bird, and without fear. And she's not a big, anyway, she just put her hands under this bird that was struggling, lifted it out of the water onto the side of the pool. She just knew to do that this bird was in, and here I'm looking around for something to put under it, right? So then the bird tries repeatedly to get off the ground, and it finally gets airborne, and there's about a 7-foot a wall in the back of our yard, and it got over the yard and was 15 or 20 feet past our wall, and it came around. It did a sudden 180 and came back around, and Christ landed in our yard. I've come to believe that bird, which died soon after that, knew that this was a good place to die. It had made it up in the air, but it knew that death, I think it knew.
Oh,
And it came back and Christ landed in our yard, and it's there flopping around in our yard. And once again, Bill is in looking at the emergency bird service that they have here in Phoenix, that they can get somebody out here. And instead, Linda is sitting quietly in her chair right close to it. And she knew the bird was dying. And the bird got closer and closer to her in the yard. And within 3 or 4 minutes, within 5 feet of her, it flipped over on its back. And within 30 seconds, it died. I think that bird knew that Linda's energy was a loving connection to life, and it was a good place to die. Now, here's what's really weird. Linda called me out right after it happened. Just as that bird died, 3 birds landed on the wall and sat there, almost looking at Linda and the dead bird for 45 seconds to a minute. Almost like they were giving remembrance or having a short wake, if you will.
The bird's friends.
They're bird's friends, or maybe they didn't even know the bird, but this was a fellow species. I don't know, But it was strange. Linda came in and she said, I'm telling you what just happened. Those birds came immediately as the bird died or right before and stayed there for another 45 seconds to a minute. And then they flew off to continue their life because they still are connected to that life energy. Now, I don't know if that helps at all, but I don't think we have to understand it intellectually. Like Sid says, once you even sense that there's a mystery, you can join the mystery. It's not that we have to understand it intellectually, but we can experience enough things that there's a knowing that's beyond intellectual, that we're connected to something. It's intelligent. To me, it's benevolent. It's trying to move us forward, but it respects our free will, respects our level of consciousness. But I don't know, that was a powerful experience for me. The other thing that happened about a week later is we had a bird that flew right into our front window and hit it so hard it died. And I really was struck by that. I thought, wow, all the bird has and all we have is our perception. Perception is reality, even when it isn't.
Yeah.
That's bird perception, was that it could fly right through that space because it was so clear. But reality was that there was a very strong glass that it hit and it died. And I think that we are lucky enough that we have this feeling state that lets us know when not to trust what we're seeing. The bird didn't have that I know of, and maybe it did, but it didn't listen. I don't know. But I'm suggesting that there's a knowing, and there's a place that when we start to lose a peaceful feeling, it's probably, to me, not probably, is trying to let us know to be as quiet as we can and as present as we can and leave our thinking alone as much as we can. I don't know. So actually, we've used the 30 minutes or the 25 minutes, unless we wanted to do.
There's only one paragraph left in this chapter.
Oh, is there one paragraph left? Okay, well, let's do that then. Okay. Whose turn is it?
As we start to regain the true relationship between our personal intelligence and spiritual wisdom that lies within, we develop a higher degree of intelligence and common sense. This, in turn, clears up our misguided lives.
I want to say something about that. I'm going to make it short because we don't have much time.
Oh, we've got 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think for me, what I understood that is important to understand is that when going into this work, I call it work because sometimes it's work. We have to develop patience, because for me, it's been a wild journey, I have to say. Ever since I came across it and I've been moving forward, there were many times where I was lost. And I was lost, and I kept struggling with my thinking again and again and again. It got me deeper and deeper. And for me, the only way out of it was to able to let go of my thinking. Now, in the page before that, it uses the word paradoxical. And I think what I think this word means is that sometimes we have to going against our own thinking doesn't make sense. And so we have to not listen to our thinking without knowing there is something waiting for us. And we have to be very, very, very patient. And sometimes it's almost counterintuitive. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that when you learn to do that, when you learn to be, it's like what you said about when we started this talk, the other talk last time, about the place of where you eat with the blind people, where everyone are blind, you know? So you can't raise your head, they're not going to see you, so you have to call for them. and you just wait for them to come. You know they will come eventually because they help you, but you don't know when they will come. You just have to wait for it.
Right.
So for me, this is the story with wisdom. And with wisdom, you need to wait for it. And
Right.
sometimes it can take a while, and you need to learn patience.
Yes.
And
do the best you can until it comes.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Try to be safe and do as little, do no harm to yourself or others. And you start to, don't you think, Ofer, that you start to have a trust if you, at the beginning, it does take faith and patience, but as you start to have the experience of having it come, you're more and more sure that it will come. And so it seems to take less patience, even if it takes the same amount of time, it seems to take less patience because you know it's going to come.
the thing is about faith is that sometimes, you know, when you told the story about the bird, so I was listening to it, and for me, there's always like two parts. Like one of them listens and understands and like it resonates, but there's always another voice that is a bit what's the word? Lacks confidence, insecure. There's some kind of insecurity that you always have to see it and push aside. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I think the more you can get faith and patience and wisdom, the less insecure you become.
I think that's beautiful. And that may be a beautiful place to stop, unless somebody has do you have some other last thoughts, Judy?
No, that's a good place to stop. I think there's a beautiful thought. That's all I was going to say is that's a beautiful thought.
Yeah,
it's really true that as the insecurity diminishes, it doesn't feel like patience anymore. It just feels like life is going at a kinder pace.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's stop for today.